Good of you to notice.
Terry, I'll be right back. We're downstairs.
Okay.
Hey,
All right. So welcome. Did call the meeting to order. We did go into executive session. We're now out and we're continuing on with our meeting. And the first thing we have on our agenda after that are the minutes of September 21st, 2021. Is there a motion?
I move we accept the minutes subject to modification.
Is there a second?
Second.
Page 1.
Kim Horning, it says Kim Horning Mercy. It should be Hornung with Hornung, and then the last part is Marcy, Marcy.
And was there, I think we have one other one, Marcy Cass.
Oh, yes, sorry, yes, and also Marcy Cass, yeah.
Anything else on page 1? Page 2?
Item number 8, it says from the fund balance. I wasn't sure if it should be from the general fund balance.
It's a fund balance reserve, so I think that
It covers it?
that
Okay.
covers it, I believe.
Terry, one thing on number 6, it doesn't mention that, it mentions the use of screamers. It doesn't mention that the use of bangers was taken off the request. And I'm wondering if it should. Does that make sense?
I didn't quite catch that, Jeff.
Okay, under number 6, it discusses the use of the screamers. but I thought one of the key points for me was the willingness of the folks requesting the variance was to take the bangers, the other pyrotechnic device, off the request. And I just wondered if
You're right.
I wonder if that should be mentioned here.
Yes.
It was important to my, how I voted.
Yeah. Yeah, that was taken off the request by USDA, by Jake.
Okay. So I just wonder if the minute should reflect that.
Yes, it should.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And page 3.
Item number 12, it should be Williston Central School.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
And under number 13, where it talks about Williston Police Action, it's the Department for Children and Families. Hearing no other corrections, all those in favor of approving the minutes of September 2021 as amended, say aye.
Aye.
We have all 4 ayes, so we have done that. We're at public comment now. Anyone in the audience and anyone at home, but I see one hand from a member of the audience. If you'd come on up and probably take your mask off so we can hear you.
Thank you.
My name is Brian Forrest. I'm the Town Energy Coordinator. I belong to Sustainable Williston also. And what I passed out are pathways in the energy plan that are no-cost pathways. What they require are either ordinances or changes to bylaws. So I'd like the board, part of this is a memo that Eric sent the board on January 5th of this year. And the top page are some other pathways in the energy plan, which is not reflected in that memo. So I'd like you, if you would, on your own time, to just review these and see if any of these things are pathways that you'd like to pursue. I think that there are several like burning and burning trash and burning anything nowadays really makes no sense when we're trying to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide put into the atmosphere. There are alternatives to burning. I think they should all be pursued and an ordinance revised to reflect that. There's also disposal of organic matter on construction sites. It's a little hard to watch that grove of trees go down on Williston Road for the storage facility and the other undefined project. And with all those trees are carbon sinks. They have every year they take more carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, and they're all being cut down. And I don't know how they were disposed of, but more than likely there's a lot of burning involved. So I think we should revisit how we dispose of organic matter on construction sites, so it doesn't contribute to our problem. It's you're either contributing to the problem or you're trying to alleviate the problem. There are also other pathways in here that you can take a look at. Just requested to do so and give some consideration. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone on the internet?
Nope, Terry, no additional comments.
Okay.
Eric, Jeff here. could you put a copy of the handout that Brian just provided in my box?
Yep, will do, Jeff.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
So next then is the liquor license application, and Eric, you're going to lead this off, and then we have a representative from Felino's.
Yep. Felino's is applying for a first class and outdoor consumption permit. I had a typo on the agenda, not a third class. We have Seth here from Felino's who can let the answer any questions from the board. Staff has no objection to this liquor license being approved.
Good. Send the representative from Felino's.
Yep.
Why don't you come up and introduce yourself and tell us what your plan is?
My name's Seth DeRochers. I'm the general manager of Felino's, and we are building a pizza shop in Williston next to the new Healthy Living, and we're applying for a first-class liquor license just to sell canned beer, canned wine. Pretty simple.
Any idea when you're going to open?
We're thinking in November sometime.
Okay.
Comes down to staffing at this point, so.
And obviously, there's our conditions that the liquor department has for training people, and how are you planning to handle that?
We're just gonna abide by whatever they, put forth, have all of our employees trained, make sure they're up to date. And, all the managers that are gonna be working there will be trained as well, so.
Have you been involved in other establishments that serve liquor or alcohol?
I have before, I worked at a Asiana house for about 10 years.
Okay.
They had a third class license. But then I was with Felino's for the past 6, and we've always been BYOB, so we wanna try to sell some beer and pizza.
I'll pass the baton. Questions, Greta?
How many seats are you anticipating indoors and outdoors?
I think indoor is going to be around 50, and probably the same outside.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah. And what are your hours of operation? Are you hoping?
we're thinking probably 12 to 9. That's what our both of their stores are. So
And that's 7 days a week?
7
Yeah.
days a week. Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions from board members?
Jeff here, sorry, could somebody remind me the difference between the first and the third class? I can never remember this.
Can you tell us?
First class
Google
is
it,
just beer and wine, and third class is like spirits, hard alcohol.
Okay, all right, good, thank you.
On premises only. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And you plan on doing only bottled or canned or bottled wine or beer, not, what's it called, draft beer?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get some draft systems. That I think you could get draft systems with the first class license, but just for simplicity.
Okay,
you can't.
I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah.
My biggest concern will be, you said you're gonna have a large outdoor seating area, which outdoors, because it's not indoors, not as confined, might have some additional areas of concern in terms of either underage drinking or folks who maybe have had too much to consume. So do you plan on doing what do you plan on doing to increase your surveillance of the outdoor seating area, if you are planning to do that at all? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, we usually have pizza runners and a manager that walks around. Everything, you won't be able to buy any beer, wine outside, so you would have to come inside to buy it.
Okay.
So you would be able to easily keep track of how many drinks you're serving.
Right, and who's purchasing it? Okay. And will the outdoor area, will it be somehow confined, or is it going to be sort of totally open?
I believe if you are serving alcohol, you have to have some sort of restrictions on where it is that they will be drinking. So we'll probably have some sort of rope or velvet around the actual seating area, and like one entrance from the building to that area.
Okay. Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions? All right, then a motion would be in order.
Move to approve a first-class liquor license and outdoor consumption permit for FIG Hospitality LLC doing business as Folinos through April 30, 2022.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
All right,
I hear 4 ayes, I believe, and so that's done. So congratulations, look forward to seeing your
Awesome.
business.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Steph.
Appreciate your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you.
We'll get this submitted tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So that brings us to the Green Mountain Transit Annual Update. John Moore, General Manager, is here, I believe, or going to be here.
He's going to join online, Terry. I don't see him
Join
online
online,
just
okay.
yet. I expect him any time now. But, and I think Amy here.
Amy,
Oh yeah, but
Amy Brewer
Amy
is-
was here. And I'm
is
not
Chapin-
sure when Chapin was going to
is
come.
Chapin going to join us?
Chapin was going to join remotely also.
Okay. Oh, there he is. Oh, I see. John's under a different name. That's what threw me off. So, John, I'll get you connected right now. I saw a different name here. There we go. Green Mountain Transit. John, I can see you. You just need to share your video and unmute here. Please. Oh, here we go. Something's.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes, we
We
can.
just can't see you, John.
Welcome.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Hi.
And let me share my screen. I apologize for the name confusion. I am John Moore. I'm the general manager from Green Mountain Transit. I believe that Chapin Kaner and Amy Brewer are in the room with you folks. Chapin is our commissioner representing Williston, and Amy is the alternate commissioner from Williston. So let me share my screen. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. So just want to present our annual overview of Green Mountain Transit and then get into some specifics of the service we provide in Williston, some of the financial contributions you folks provide to the authority, and then answer any questions you may have. So to get started, just a quick history of GMT. We actually started back in 1973 as the Chittenden County Transportation Authority. We were and still are the only transit authority within the state of Vermont. In 2016, CCTA and the Green Mountain Transit Agency, which provided service at the time in Washington, Lamoille, Franklin, and Grand Isle counties, we actually combined and became one organization, renamed the Green Mountain Transit Authority, and then we go by GMT for our public-facing branding. So today we provide public transportation service in 6 counties in Vermont. So we're by far the largest transit provider in the state of Vermont. We're directed by a 13-member board of commissioners. And overall, we have about 180 full-time equivalent employees, 160 revenue vehicles, which range from sedans up to 45-foot over-the-road coach buses, and almost 1,000 bus stops total throughout our 6-county service area. So I won't read our mission, but what we do is provide safe, convenient, and accessible and innovative mobility solutions to the public. And what we're trying to achieve is to reduce congestion and pollution, promote smart growth along transit lines where possible, and really at the end of the day, enhance the quality of life for all. So that includes our passengers that take the bus, but also the public that don't take the bus. By providing high quality services, there's economic development, there's reduced congestion for everybody on the roadways. So even people that don't utilize transit services, there's still a huge benefit created for them. And that's the message that we try to promote as much as we can. So just a quick snapshot on our financial information. Our overall operating budget in fiscal year 21 was about 21 million. Roughly 2/3 of that was in our urban operating area, which is essentially Chittenden County. And you can see a quick breakdown of our revenue sources. I will say that FY21 is a little skewed. So our federal funding at 61% is higher than it typically is. And that's due to some direct COVID relief funds that we received to help us through the pandemic. And partly due to those federal funds that we received, we were able to operate all of our services fare free in this current year. So typically we get about 15% of our operating revenue from the fare box, what people actually pay per ride. We are, again, not operating, we're not charging a fare on our services right now. So we're paying for that difference with our federal funds. So that number is certainly higher than it typically is. And then we get about 15% of our revenue from the state of Vermont, about 22% from our local municipalities, which Williston is one of, and then about 2% from other revenue, which is primarily onboard advertising revenue. So that's very important to our budget. And we do provide a varied mix of different types of services. Again, we view ourselves as a mobility provider, and we're trying to right size the service for the demand that may exist. So we operate fixed route service, which is the typical city bus service that you think of. Anywhere between a 30 to a 40-foot big blue bus operating on set schedules. We also operate, a decent amount of commuter service. So from our downtown Burlington location, we serve Montpelier, St. Albans, Jeffersonville, Milton, and also Heinsberg. We also operate demand response service, and these are services for folks that may not be able to access our normally scheduled buses for a variety of reasons. So there's the Americans with Disability Act service, the ADA. In Chittenden County, we actually contract that with SSTA. You've probably seen their white vehicles running around town. So that service provides complimentary service in a 3/4 of a mile buffer around all of our fixed route services. So if somebody, for a mobility reason cannot, access one of our bus stops, we provide door-to-door service for folks that qualify and are eligible for that service. Another similar program is the Elders and Disabled program. That essentially mirrors the ADA program, but the geography is expanded. So for folks that live in Williston Woods, for example, they're more than 3/4 of a mile from our fixed route service, but they do qualify for this Elders and Disabled program. And that service, can bring people to dialysis, cancer treatment, but also grocery shopping, social outings, haircuts. So it's really critical for, their day-to-day lives and having that mobility option. We also provide the non-emergency medical transportation service. That's essentially the Medicaid transportation contract in our service area. In Chittenden County, that is also provided by SSTA, but for folks that qualify for that program, it again provides that transportation to those medical appointments and other qualifying trips that are critical for many reasons. We also operate weekly grocery shopping trips. So these are services that brings folks from primarily senior living complexes to local grocery stores. Just makes it an easier trip than taking our normal services. We do operate seasonal mountain service, so we're gearing up for that, both in the town of Stowe and in the Sugarbush area of the Mad River Valley. We operate seasonal service, kind of geared to the tourism industry. And lastly, we've started a pilot project down in Montpelier, which I'll speak a little bit more about, called Microtransit, which we're excited for to try to increase the convenience of public transit and try to increase the usage of transit and the benefits that creates. So this is a snapshot of our fiscal year 21 ridership. So system-wide, we did 1.42 million rides. The pandemic has certainly hit our ridership pretty hard. So we're down 35% from FY20 and almost 50% from FY19, which of course was the last full fiscal year without any COVID-19 impacts. So the majority of that ridership is in Chittenden County, as you would probably guess, so about 86%. You can see that the paratransit in Chittenden County is a much lower number at about 3%. But again, those rides are critical. Those are for folks that, have some mobility challenges and need to get to medical care and social appointments. So we always point that out because those trips are much more expensive to operate than our fixed route service on a per boarding basis, but really lifeline type trips and, really critical that those services are offered for people's mobility needs. So in terms of Williston specifically, we are in the process of developing our FY23 budget. We will hopefully have some numbers to share with Eric after our November board meeting. There's a few things at play. Number one, COVID-19. Obviously, there's still impacts lingering for that from a financial perspective. We're also in the midst of negotiating 3 of our labor contracts. We hope to have one signed tomorrow and approved. That's our largest contract, so that will give us some more clarity on our FY23 budget. But we will also have 2 additional outstanding labor contracts to finalize. So there's really 2 parts of the assessment that GMT bills Williston. That first part is for the fixed route assessment. So we operate 2 fixed routes within Williston. I'll go over the details in a minute. But that amount in FY22 was $206,000. We are, as I said, by December, hopefully by November, we'll have the assessment amounts for FY23. And typically that's a 3 to 4% increase over the previous fiscal year. So we'll get Eric updated on that as soon as we can. The other kind of curveball that's at play right now is back in 2018, before the pandemic, we implemented some service changes through a next gen plan, which we presented to you folks 3 years ago or so. After that service plan took place, we experienced some financial challenges. So unfortunately, we had to scale back some service. Some communities actually saw an increase, others saw a decrease. It was kind of a net neutral in terms of overall service provided, but the way our charter reads, anytime there's more than 10 hours of service added or deleted from a given community in a week, there could be assessment impacts. So we're trying to unravel that. And then of course, COVID came along and that threw a wrench in our service planning as well. But there may be some other impacts for FY23 and if not in FY24 based on the actual service now provided after this service planning exercise was implemented. The second piece of the assessment is for that ADA paratransit service I just mentioned. So in FY22, that was about $24,000 for the town of Williston. And that assessment amount is based on actual usage. So the way it works is that we develop a total program budget projection. So in FY22, that was 1.34 million. Our charter says that member municipalities get a 50% discount off of that. So the total 50% value of that ADA budget was about 700,000. And then we allocate the assessments based on actual ridership. So in FY21, which was the last completed year that we used to apply these assessments, Williston had about 1,000 total rides that started in Williston with residents. That represented about 3.5% of the total ADA rides. 3.5% of that 700,000 is the 24,000 for the ADA assessment. The tricky thing with the ADA assessment, because it's based on actual usage, that can fluctuate fairly significantly on a year-to-year basis. If 1 or 2 individuals move into town and they have daily medical appointments, that could increase the percentage of the overall usage, which increases the assessment amount. We are looking with the board at a more stable approach to that, which it would end up being more like the fixed route assessment, looking at it more as a regional service and then applying an overall increase to everybody, but at least from a budgetary standpoint, the town would have a better sense of what the baseline would be year to year. The last thing I'll mention on that, as we develop our FY23 ADA budget, SSTA, who's our contractor of that service, they have seen some cost pressures, COVID related. So the ridership has bounced back, but in some of their other programs, it's still lacking. So essentially what happens is there's less overall hours to spread their fixed cost over. So there could be some rate impacts, which is applied then to our program. So we're hoping to keep that number, that assessment, as close as possible. But there could be some impacts, both based on actual usage and then also the rate impact with SSTA. I will say that in FY21 is the year we'll use to apply the actual usage. That was actually a lower percentage of the overall ridership than it was in FY20. Not a direct correlation to the overall assessment, but it bodes well that the share of actual rides went down for Williston. So again, we'll have all of this information to Eric by December at the latest, but we hope our goal was to have it to you guys in November for your budgetary timeline. The other service that you folks provide typically is the elders and disabled local match. In this current year, there was no local match through the state of Vermont. In their COVID relief funds, they're providing 100% funding for that service. So in FY23, those funds will likely be exhausted and we'll be looking for that 20% match, which is in the ballpark of $10,000 annually. And that provided in FY21 about 1,200 Williston rides. So again, a very important program. So just a quick overview of our fixed route service that we operate in Williston. So our number one Williston route provides service from downtown Burlington out to Taft's Corners with stops at the University Mall. Our busiest route in FY21, almost 300,000 boardings. It provides our highest level of service, operates 7 days a week, 20-minute rush hour service. So there's a bus every 20 minutes during the rush hour. And we're actually operating 20 minutes all day long with some of our COVID service changes. And then we do operate service until about 11:40 Monday through Saturday PM, which is critical for folks that work those non-traditional hours and use the bus for commuting. The other route in town is our Williston Essex number 10 route. So that provides service between Taft's Corners, the Five Corners and Essex Junction. And we've extended that and combined it with our Essex Center route. So now it also travels up to the Essex outlets and provides service on Sand Hill Road in Essex. So a much lower ridership, about 20,000 boardings in FY21. And with the lower ridership, a lower level of service. So we provide service 6 days a week. There's no Sunday service. And there's a bus that runs every 75 minutes. One of the things that we'll look at going forward, based on ridership and other factors, is maybe cutting that frequency in half. So instead of a bus every 75 minutes, we'd like to get one every 35 or 40 minutes. And again, that's kind of tied back into some of our assessments and local match with our planning process. So just a quick overview of some other initiatives that we're currently undertaking or planning on undertaking in FY23. For Williston, in addition to that number 10 frequency, looking at that, we know there's some plans for the exit 12 park and ride. So looking at ways and to serve that would be effective and efficient. The frequency improvements that I mentioned. Pre-pandemic, we've implemented some technology upgrades to try to make our service as convenient as possible. So when we were charging a fare, we get a lot of feedback that it's $1.50 to take the trip, and sometimes it's not the cost of the ride; it's the inconvenience factor of actually having cash on hand. So we've partnered with a software company, and we've implemented a mobile ticketing app. So if and when we go back to charging fares, people can actually load money onto their smartphone and they just show the driver a pass on their phone. So it removes the need to have cash on hand to take the bus. So we're excited about that. We've also implemented a real-time bus tracking software. So you can go on your phone or your computer, and if you want to take a bus at 4 o'clock and you want to make sure it's on time, you can see in real time on a map where that bus is and what the projected arrival time is. So if it's, January and 10 degrees, you're not waiting out at the bus stop. If the bus is 10 minutes delayed, you can wait inside and plan your trip to the bus stop around actual arrival information. The Microtransit project is something that we're excited about. This is a pilot project down in Montpelier we have ongoing right now. And essentially what this is operating public transit services kind of in the Uber Lyft model, where it's purely on demand with the app-based technology. So it's a direct consumer to vehicle communication. Folks can say, I'd like to request a ride at this time, at this location, going to this destination. And through the software and a call center option, we do our best to meet that travel demand as closely as possible. We do think there's some potential of that also being applied in Chittenden County, and it may not replace full bus routes like we've done in Montpelier, but it could provide a first mile, last mile solution and some low density applications such as Williston Village, where we did up to a few years ago operate, a transit service with 40-foot buses, and the demand just wasn't there. We weren't able to go up into the neighborhoods off Route 2, but we think there is demand. It just wasn't met with that service model. So a microtransit type service may be appropriate for that application. We're also working on a transit strategic plan for the organization, including strategic goals and also some forward-thinking planning, for the next 10, 15 years for both service development, but also capital planning and making sure that we're using, our public funds as efficiently as possible. The CCRPC, the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, is currently doing a study on transit financing. We think this is a critical study. It's looking at ways to fund transit other than the property tax. The local match is always the most challenging piece of financing transit. We look at it as, again, a regional service. We're very much funded locally, which does create some challenges with how we plan our services. So we think that's a great study. It's also looking at ways to fund fare free, into the future, but making sure transit, has a sustainable and reliable funding model. So it's been studied multiple times in the past without, any actionable items. But we're hoping, with the Climate Council and some other, exciting things at the state level, we can gain some traction this time around. We're also prioritizing new bus deliveries. We have a relatively old bus fleet. We went many, many years without any new bus purchases. That impacts our maintenance costs. So we're trying to get on a more sustainable bus replacement schedule. Essentially, the newer the bus fleet, the lower your operating costs. And there's some advantages from a budgetary perspective with the capital replacement. So we have 8 new buses either delivered. We had 3 delivered today, actually, from California, and then we'll have 5 more delivered sometime before June. So we're excited for that. Provides a better passenger experience as well. It's a newer bus, not as much shaking and rattling. We've also recently started operating 2 electric buses, 2 40-foot electric buses in Chittenden County. We're looking at some facility master planning to accommodate more buses in the future, working with our funding partners to try to continue the development of our bus electrification plan. So hopefully more to come on that. We've also started a Jedi Program, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Our board has prioritized that. Staff's very excited about that, becoming a more inclusive workplace and making sure all our passengers feel welcome and safe on board our buses. So we've put a lot of resource into that. And then lastly, we've spent a lot of time in the last 18 months, obviously, with COVID response, making sure our employees and passengers are as safe as possible. Face masks are required on board all of our vehicles. That's a federal TSA mandate. And again, that zero fare, we started that to try to protect our passengers, to create our drivers, to create social distancing, both of the passenger and the drivers. It allows us to use our rear door for boardings. It actually speeds up travel times. So again, we'll be looking at potentially continuing that, past FY22. So a long list of exciting things, but we're excited for what the future brings. And that's my presentation, my contact information. Happy to answer any questions now, or if you want to reach out to me, if you think of anything later, please do so.
Good, thank you. Not sure if Chapin has joined us remotely or not yet. But,
Yep, he has, Terry.
he has. So if Chapin and Amy would have anything to add to the report, that would be helpful.
I'd like to let Amy go first, if I may, and also just to comment that that is Jonathan Moore, not Jamie Smith. You can ignore the name on the Zoom box. Amy, do you want to go first?
Sure. So John covered quite a bit, and I've spent past few years as the alternate listening and trying to learn as much from folks like John and Chapin as I can. I'll add that we've talked a lot about electrification. We've talked about ways to make this service easier and more accessible for folks. It's exciting to see some of the development opportunities happening along Route 2A with the conversion of the hotel to housing, which is along the bus route, which means it's more accessible to folks. So there's a lot of exciting opportunities happening that I'm really very excited, as well as how this fits with the mobility project that I'm also involved with here in Williston. It's nice to see how they all connect. And Chapin, I'll let you add. I know you've got some wonderful priorities that you want to share.
Sure. The most important thing I have to add is that I think it's time for Amy to become our commissioner. She has put in 4 years and she's been active on the finance committee and she's very good. And I think it's time for me to step aside and have her do that. And so I've requested through Eric, if you would be willing, since we both have terms that end in next June, if we could swap our roles for that time. And I would be a supportive alternate and Amy would be your representative. So that's the first thing I have to say. You don't have to decide that tonight. I was delaying this decision partly to make sure we made it through the current labor negotiations. I'm expecting tomorrow morning we will have a contract with our largest union, and that's an important milestone. In terms of service, I did want to point out that the Whitecap, you may have seen on the list that John had up, that Whitecap is being serviced. That's the on Industrial Avenue. And because we have no sidewalks on Industrial Avenue and we do have demand there, we responded this year to request to provide service just on a couple of runs a day so that people who work there can use the bus to get to work safely. I also wanted to say that John mentioned maybe getting more frequency on the number 10 that goes to Essex and the Lang Farm Shopping Center. And to me, that is very important. And also, in part because we are seeing the conversion of the hotel on Zephyr Road to affordable living apartments, and some of those people may rely on that transit for their travel. And so I would really love to see the number 10 have increased service and also to extend past the time that the Amtrak arrives in Essex Junction. The next thing is that Microtransit, the experiment we're doing in Montpelier, I think, is a very good model that Williston is likely to want to follow either through GMT or even potentially on a municipal level for that last mile, as John was talking about. And it's as easy as taking an Uber, and John went by this fast, but we do in Montpelier allow people to call the call center and get a ride that way. They don't have to have an app on their phone. And finally, I wanted to say that the Next Gen study made a lot of recommendations for changes to service, and we implemented them right as COVID was hitting us, or actually 6 months ahead of that. And as a commissioner, I'm bound to vote for things that are in the best interest of Green Mountain Transit. I represent Williston in terms of information, but there was a hard decision there, which is that we lost the village route at that time. and we had a decrease in service, and I still supported the plan because I thought it would make us fiscally more stable into the future. Also, the thing that John mentioned where our assessment is supposed to be altered if more than 10 hours a week of service is changed. And we all felt that that was premature to do that based on the changes for the next gen implementation, because we were likely to be fine tuning it. And so we thought we should wait a year and then assess where things were. And at that point, make changes in our assessments as needed. Then COVID hit, and that's our schedules have gone all over the place to try to make sure, because we are a service that is necessary service for people getting to appointments, medical appointments, jobs, et cetera. So we have had to maintain service, but we've had to make adjustments. So finally, we are just now in the process of looking at what our service levels are, and we will be making an adjustment, if not for this assessment, then for the next one, to make sure that we are fairly assessing towns. As you know, because I've said it over and over, having towns support regional transit doesn't make sense. All you have to think of, what would happen if South Burlington dropped out and said they're not going to be part of Green Mountain Transit? What would happen to us? So it's a regional service and it should have regional funding, and I'm glad the CCRPC is taking another look at it. And also, I'm a strong advocate for electrification and for fare free. And I do want to mention on the fare free, we've done it as a COVID response so that passengers can enter and exit through the rear door, which makes it safer for the operators. But also, in general, if people don't need to have exact change, and if the operator doesn't have to argue with someone who thinks they should get a reduced fare, et cetera, it actually speeds up the service, which then makes it more advantageous. And so I support fare free for a variety of reasons. And as you may have seen in the pie chart, although it's significant, our fare revenue is not the driving force behind us. And so we were having a whole lot of problems financially before COVID hit. The CARES funds made it so we were fine continuing through, and the other funding that's coming is helpful, but we do need to be looking at a regional funding mechanism that's strong, because this kind of transit is a vital part of meeting the state's energy goals. We need to reduce the number of car trips, and we can only do that if we provide good, reliable, frequent service that people take advantage of. So I really think it's an important service for the long run. Thank you.
Thanks, Chapin. Thanks to both you and Amy for your incredible amount of time you spend on this during the course of your term, so we appreciate that. Any questions for John or Chapin or Amy from the board?
I have a question that's not exactly from the presentation, but is there an overall plan to have the buses become electric or more environmentally friendly?
There's an informal plan. So we've spent a lot of time recently on our 2 electric buses. The technology is still in its infancy. So one consideration is that we get a product that's reliable enough to meet our service needs. The other consideration is that electric bus costs about double the price of a diesel bus. There's some federal programs in place to help alleviate that issue. But we really want to make sure that the technology meets our service obligation needs. And then, through our capital planning, we'll start developing some more long-term replacement plans.
Any further questions?
Jeff here, if it's okay, Terry, for me to go?
Yes.
Okay, great. First, thanks, Chapin, for bringing up the question or issue of the fixed route assessment for Williston. And I just want to chime in that's really, I think, I view that as really important, that assessment be as fair as possible. I'm not complaining, I understand, but CCTA, or I'm sorry, Green Mountain Transit, is a big cost ticket item for us. And it's helpful to be able to defend that cost, which I'm happy to do if I know that it's fairly assessed. So that's all I'll say there. Glad to hear about the bus tracking system. I am an ex and hopefully will be a future again once this whole COVID issue resolves itself, whatever that means, to use the Green Mountain Transit bus from the Richmond Park and Ride to Montpelier. And one of the most frustrating things is to be standing there at National Life on a cold winter night, looking at an app that was telling us the bus was already there when 20 minutes later, it might have shown up. So I hope the new software works better. And last but not least, question, regional financing. Could you just, is there a quick explanation of what that might look like?
Well, I can give you a quick list of options of what it may look like.
Good enough, yes.
Increase to the gas tax, regional local option tax, registration fee increases. So there's a lot of revenue generation ideas. The question is, will they generate the revenue needed to replace the property tax reliance, and will they be politically, feasible to implement? So there's many past studies by the CCRPC that identify potential revenue options. The tricky part will be implementing one.
Okay, good. Yeah. And so it might take statutory change to be able to enact that.
If I could add just that we have not had the political will in Montpelier or elsewhere to take that on. But with trying to meet the carbon goals, I think that there's more, and the climate action, there's going to be more attention to this. And I think more sources of funding, there may become more political will to fund it some other way. Some areas in other parts of the countries have taxes on energy of all types, whether it's electricity, whatever, any energy coming into the county has a tax on it. And it's not called a tax because it's at the source. It's, I can't remember what it's called, but it means that it's completely hidden from the consumer. And that seems to be more palatable, but so far no option has been had political legs.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for being here tonight, virtually and in person, and we'll consider the realignment of our volunteers in the near future. So, thank you.
Thanks for your work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Moving on to the water main extension request from CSWD. And Eric, I think you're going to start off, and then we can introduce representatives from CSWD and perhaps Du Bois and King.
Yep. I'm getting the three of them connected here. I'll try to multitask. Or maybe I can't multitask. Some brief introduction. This is a request from Champlain, Chittenden Solid Waste District for a water main extension on Redmond Road. We'll have Josh Tyler, Tim Shea from CSWD, and Matt Mears from Du Bois and King joining us this evening, along with Public Works Director Bruce Horace here in the room. The board, you may recall, has a newly adopted policy to help guide decision-making when requests like this come before the board. The board could consider action tonight or at a future meeting. And I believe Terry wanted our group making the request to provide an overview first, and then staff can walk through its memo here. And I can see you, Josh, and then, yep, we're getting all connected here. Here we go.
All right, I'll start off. Thank you for having us. Just a general overview that was kind of laid out in the memo we sent through. Actually, let me back up. My name is Josh Tyler. I'm with the Chittenden Solid Waste District. I'm the Director of Operations. I'm joined by Tim Shea of CSWD. He's our project manager. And Matt Mears, he is the consulting engineer from Du Bois and King, who has been working on the technical specifications for this water line extension. So basically down Redmond Road, where the bulk of our facilities are, we're looking to extend a water line from right about where the Global Foundries entry is off of Redmond Road, about 2,500 feet down to meet the needs of our compost facility. We've been slowly building out our compost facility to get it as efficient as possible. And we're in our final stages of completing that. And so part of that is to bring water down the road to supply it in the summer when things get really dry. Because historically we truck it in from that hydrant we're pulling from and bring it down when we really need it. So that's the basic overview. Tim will be overseeing the project as our project manager, and Matt will be working all of the technical angles as well.
Anything else for your presentation, Josh? Is Tim or?
No, yeah, this was just a general overview. We included some maps in with I apologize. Yeah, I didn't plan a present. Just wanted to give an overview of the project, and the plan itself should have been in your select board packet. And I'll be available to answer any questions if there are any. Anything that's project based, for Tim, and anything that's technical based, I'll defer to Matt.
So a question probably for you, CSWD is going to assume all the cost of extending the lines, including the fire hydrants?
That is correct.
Other questions before we move on to Bruce? Bruce?
Sorry, Terry, I was trying to unmute myself. One quick question. Is there any issue about whether this extension is or needs to be within a water service district within Williston?
There is no defined water service district in the town of Williston. We've always used the sewer service area as the default, but there is no basic water, sewer, or water service area defined.
Okay. Okay. So if the answer is we want one, that's a whole different subject for a different night.
That's correct.
Yep, okay.
Bruce, anything you want to add as far as the full service?
No, I mean, you have my memo, which looked at this extension through the new policy that was set up. And my answer is under that policy. I believe it meets all three of the criteria. Not any reason to not allow it. Certainly, you know, the memo and tonight isn't meant as any approval of any plans or permits or anything else that they have to come in the door with. And I know you asked the question, Terry, but certainly we would treat this like any developer going to do a project, and the bill's on them.
So I presume there are borings done that have to be done to make sure that the line can go the way they want it to.
That would be on them too.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I don't necessarily know that they'd have to do borings. Vermont Gas has run their line all the way up through there. But it certainly would, if they start putting the line in and running the ledge and they gotta get rid of it, that'll be on them. So, it's not a bad idea, but certainly I would let their engineer propose that kind of stuff. We would look at it from whether it meets all our standards. We'd make sure, you know, the hydrants are going into our standards, the amount of hydrants, the connections for the lots as they go by. The one thing to remember is that all but one property, as far as I know, for this extension is all CSWD land anyway. Yeah, we did look at it from what it would do as far as our water supply, and we're able to supply the water. Champlain Water District confirmed that as well. It does. We end up with 200,000 gallons per day left before we get to our 50% for fire protection kind of storage, which is under the water supply rules, which is quite a bit. We're okay there, so we don't see any real issues with this.
And right now, they're actually using water now and just trucking it, so I wouldn't expect.
Hydrants.
we probably wouldn't expect much more usage then.
They don't just take, they don't, right now, the water just doesn't come from us. They do bring water from other towns.
Oh, really?
Sometimes, yeah.
Ah.
I suspect the majority of it is from us, but there has been water brought from.
Other,
Bruce,
Jeff?
real quick, first, just a recognition that the 5 hydrants is a benefit to the town, but it also leads to my question of, will there be other folks, property owners, who will be able to tap into this line?
No, once again, CSWD owns mostly all the property. The only property I know of is the one property that's owned by Global that abuts the road. The rest of it is all under CSWD control, as far as I know.
Okay, but that could always change too. I mean, CSWD could decide they don't need a piece of property and sell it, and you know, residential goes in, and if that residential goes in, they could tap into this line.
They sure.
Yep, okay.
Question from the audience? Who will own the line? Who will own the line?
I would suggest that unless somebody else taps onto that line, that from where it, the whole extension that they're gonna put in is gonna be their line. They'll be responsible for it. It will be technically the town of Williston's line. It can't be anybody else's line, because it's gonna be underneath our permit. But just like anything else, I mean, since it's just serving them exclusively to start with, I don't see why we would why we would want ownership of it. We will have ownership of it, but through an agreement, they will be responsible if anything happens from the point of connection out to there. Until, like Jeff says, if another property, if they sell some property and somebody else wants to connect onto it, then that would change that. But at this point, it's serving one business and one business only.
So nuts and bolts, how would that agreement come into existence?
Yeah,
Would it be when they
yeah,
apply for a permit?
What's that?
Good question.
How would a agreement that says they're gonna have to do maintenance, repair, et cetera,
We
come
do
into
that-
existence? Would
We
that
do
be,
that now, Ted.
well,
Through the permitting process.
Through the permitting
As they come in-
process,
As they come into us,
yeah, that's my question.
they'll get a letter from us, just like Cottonwood or any of those private developments that say exactly that the lines technically belong to the town of Williston, because otherwise they'd have to have their own permit to operate, and that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So they're ours, but through that agreement with a letter that we have that goes in the file with everything, they're responsible for the hydrants, for if any of the line breaks, repairs, those kind of things.
Yep.
We're gonna be responsible for the water quality still. It's our water going through our line. They're a customer. But it's just like it's leaving our property and going on private property. In this case, it's still gonna be in our right of way, but it's only serving the one business at this point.
Okay, great, thank you.
Further questions from the board? If there is no other request for information tonight, there is a motion suggested if we're ready to take action on that.
I'd move to approve a water main extension request from the Chittenden Solid Waste District on Redmond Road in accordance with the town's water main extension policy.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. I think I hear all 4 ayes. So we have taken care of that. Thank you, Bruce. And we'll move on then to the market factor wage scale adjustment. And Eric and Bruce, you're both on the deck for this one.
Yep. And I can start things off. The board's got a memo in your agenda packet. I'll try to just recap some main points of it this evening, and we're here to answer any questions. The town, like many employers right now, is facing challenges recruiting and retaining positions in the labor market. We have 2 positions open in the Highway Division of Public Works and 1 in the Water Sewer Division. These positions are attracting limited candidates. With the winter operations season quickly approaching, staffing's starting to become more of a concern. We've been working with Hickok and Boardman to review our pay scales, and it's been a little over 5 years since the partial review was last completed for us. The benchmark you look at for public nonprofit sector is about the 25th percentile of the market for positions. We found the town, for the most part, is on track where it should be for our starting wage, and we're finding that based on this industry benchmark from our consultants. What we're running into with these DPW positions, we're not having success in recruiting, and Bruce can speak this more, retention of some staff for these positions. The next approach the consultants suggested is for the town to consider increasing the minimum starting wage for some select positions, moving further towards the 50th percentile with the market. The change for the select board to consider is increasing the starting wage for these positions. And reviewing options for the board, staff can suggest considering $21 per hour from the current $18.49. This represents a 13.5% increase. This would push the wages towards the 40th percentile of the market. And I've gone back and forth with our consultants on this, trying to advise where a number to think about for the board, and really where the sweet spot is from our consultants. They responded to me. It depends on the factors, which continue to shift right now. We see it everywhere. Availability of qualified applicants, other organizations, what they're doing for adjusting pay ranges and benefits, and what happens in the local and regional economy now. The board sets the amount of the market adjustment should it consider action. And then the other piece of this, to make this adjustment for these select positions, recommendation is it would involve the same percentage increase for current staff as outlined in the memo. And a little history I looked up, in November 2018, the town implemented a market adjustment of about 5%. Another option for the board to consider, the consultants raised with me, was to consider one-time bonus retention payments. Could view this, could work in the shorter term, but it could present some of the same challenges with ongoing retention with a one-time payment. Staff seeks direction from the select board, any action to take, any additional information that the board might need to think about this. And Bruce is here, and he can speak to his experience in trying to recruit and fill positions if the board's interested.
Bruce?
Well, right now, as you can see in this memo, how many times we've advertised for positions, 25 total times since 2018, not for 25 different positions, but for positions we're not able to get filled. It's very hard to get somebody to come to work for 18 something an hour and expect them to live within 25 miles, which basically puts them in Chittenden County. $21 an hour is just $42,000 a year, not an unreasonable salary to pay somebody that we want to have a CDL license and have some responsibility, have a lot of responsibility throughout the course of the day, but especially during the wintertime when they're out there by themselves, even though there's 7 others out on the road with them. They're in that truck by themselves, making decisions as they're going along. Everybody that we have lost, besides retirement, we have lost for higher pay. The towns around us are just as hungry as we are for people, and they're paying more money. So I had one gentleman in 2 weeks ago, very nice guy, interviewed really well, didn't have plowing experience, but had a lot of truck experience, mechanical experience. He was going from here to go talk to Colchester, Essex, and or in Milton. So when he walked out the door, I knew I wasn't going to see him again. And I haven't. Actually, he did email me the other day, thank me for my time. We've been slotted 8 positions in highway for quite a few years now. We've only filled that 8th position for about 6 months since we've had it available. Last winter, we had it filled for a while. A young man came to work for us, started out in a truck that didn't need a CDL, got his CDL, and as soon as he got his CDL, he left for other employment, more money. Gentleman right now that's actually the foreman for the town of Moncton was a young man that worked for us, great guy, left here, went to Moncton for $3 more an hour, and now is the foreman of their 4-person highway crew. I honestly believe that if we can get people in the door with the right money, that we can keep them here. It's a good place to work. We try to make the job exciting, fun. It's one of the things I tell people all the time is, you know, I want you to get up in the morning and want to come to work, and I want you to go home at the end of the day, and I want you to have some fun in between while you're here. I mean, it's, you know, who wants to go to work and be miserable all day long? But right now, we're down to 6 in highway. Water and sewer, we're even a bigger jam, even though what Eric just said is absolutely correct. Right now, we're down to 2 people in water and sewer, because one of the 3 that we have is actually out with a health issue and probably won't be back. I just found out tonight before I walked into this meeting until probably February. So that puts us down to 2 people in water and sewer for a 4-man crew. We lost the 3rd. We had that position. We had that all full, but we lost the 3rd one then. Once again, a gentleman that was here for 6 months, got a better offer and took it. So we need to get these salaries to a point where people can make a decent wage, and then they still look at all the other benefits they have. I mean, if you look at the construction field, some of these guys are making better money, but they might be driving to Brattleboro to go to work tomorrow. I mean, one of the things that's nice about these jobs, and one of the reasons I'm in this kind of work, is I like the work, I like what I do, but I also know that I'm not going to be traveling all over the world. I did that for 10 years full-time and 10 years part-time already, so yeah, I really applaud Eric for working with us to try to present this to you all in a manner that makes sense and hopefully shows where we're at, and that this is something that really needs to happen for us to be able to keep. If you guys approve this, believe me, you're going to see an ad in the paper. I stopped advertising right now because every time I do, the minute we talk about money, it's gone. A guy called me the other day, works for another town, told me, this is what I need an hour. And I said, well, you may as well stay there. I would have told him that anyway, even if we had this change, because this will give us some more leeway to get some people in the door that might even have a little bit of experience, and keep the guys that we have that are under this rate right now from jumping ship and going elsewhere.
Questions from the board for Bruce?
So you mentioned that obviously that other towns are, you know, offering more competitive rates. Are other towns also struggling to fill these positions? Are there lots of vacancies in neighboring towns?
Right now in neighboring towns right around us, I don't think that it's quite as bad, but the answer is yes. Everybody's advertising all the time. Mm-hmm. I talked to Essex today, and their big thing was, it sounded to me like they were looking for some part-time winter help, which they haven't been able to get. But Essex, Colchester both offer more money than us. They've both been offering incentives for people to come on board. Every time, and I've sent it to Eric quite a bit, he probably gets tired of seeing it from me, the Vermont Local Roads will put out advertisements, and anytime I see one in there that actually puts a starting salary in it, that's $21 or $22 or $23 an hour, I send it to Eric and say, this is what we're competing against. Mm-hmm. And some of these aren't even in Chittenden County. Right. So it's tough everywhere for everybody to find work right now. But for us to be able to get people that have some qualifications and stuff, we've got to at least be to a level where we can be competitive wage-wise to even think about getting people in the door. This winter, if we go into winter the way we are right now, and there's no guarantee that if you guys accept this, that this will get us people here anyway. If we go into winter the way we are right now, sidewalks are not going to get done until well after storms. Because I'm going to be taking that person, he doesn't know it yet, I'm going to be taking him out of the sidewalk machine and putting him in a truck that he's never driven before yet either. And then when we get a chance, we'll be on the sidewalks after that. So,
Other questions?
Bruce, Jeff here. I mean, you pretty much got me convinced, and this is a story we're hearing across multiple sectors, employment sectors. My question is if this, I don't know if you remember this, but my preference is when I learn something about an initiative like this, is not to vote on it the night that we first get introduced to it. Do you need an answer tonight, or can it wait a week or two?
I knew you were gonna say that, Jeff. No, I would tell you, we need the answer. Certainly, if you want to wait a week or two, we'll live with it, but we're getting closer and closer to winter, and we've got to get these ads out. I mean, as you know, it's not a, put an ad out, somebody walks in the door and I hire them.
Right.
So, I would ask you all to, try to make that decision this evening.
Let me ask Eric a question. We're have a select board retreat next week. Could this be part of the agenda of that public meeting? Public select board meeting?
But it certainly could at the board's purview. If the board didn't want to consider action this evening, we could have that on the agenda as well.
That would be my preference, but I'm one of four tonight.
I don't see the need to delay. I don't know any information we're gonna get between now and next week that would add or subtract from what we have now. I'm also in favor of it. And I think that the quicker we can get this in the works, the better it will be, because I know from trying to hire in my job, it seems like every week that goes by without posting a position adds 3 weeks on to getting enough good applicants in, or longer.
Ed, I'm 100% in agreement with you. The one thing that's missing is the ability for the public to provide any input, positive, negative, agree, disagree on this. And that's the piece that's missing for me.
Other questions? There is a motion suggested. If anybody wishes to present that.
I'd move to authorize the town manager to make a market factor wage scale adjustment for Public Works Department positions in grades 3 and grade 4 of the town wage and compensation schedule for non-represented staff as outlined in the memo dated October 5, 2020.
Is there a second?
I second.
Is there discussion on the motion?
Well, the only discussion I have is, again, my preference would be not to vote tonight. I'd prefer to abstain simply because I don't feel like I have what could be a critical piece of information, i.e. the public input. Probably not, but it could be. You can never say. I guess what I'll do is I'll wait and see how the vote goes, because I don't want this to be defeated because of a lack of a quorum on it. But on the other hand, would prefer to wait a week, if that all makes sense.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there any opposed? And any abstentions?
One abstention.
So we have 3-1 and the motion 3-0-1 and the motion passes. We'll move on then to the,
Thank you, and on behalf of my employees, thank you.
thanks, Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah.
Move on then to the Town Energy Committee discussion. And again, tonight we're only discussing the Energy Committee. And Eric has presented us some information regarding the draft charge for the committee, which we had 2 weeks ago. And some other information that he has gathered in response to some of the comments from a couple of weeks ago. So Eric.
Sure. Yeah, just to echo that, Terry, I've included a couple documents after the discussion at the last board meeting. I've left the draft charge as it was for the board to discuss further this evening. And I've also taken, I looked at a number of other energy committees and commissions throughout the state and communities similar size and structure of Williston, and include that in a memo to give the board an idea what their charges and tasks look like from those other communities, how they've approached this question. And I've also included a number of our boards, our committees and commissions, to show how those have been structured for other committees and commissions in the past. And should the board consider action, I was reviewing the town charter, and the board would need to adopt a resolution to establish a new committee, and by finding in the resolution reasoning to do so. So there's a draft resolution included in your materials as well, should you wish to consider any action this evening.
Thank you. So what I'd like to do for this is to open the floor up for discussion from the board, first of all, and then go to comments from the public. So any questions from the board regarding the proposed draft for the charge?
My only comment is a positive one. I read it. I think it's in line with what everybody was thinking. I think the resolution establishes it appropriately, and I plan on voting for it.
Other questions or comments from board?
Certainly in favor of getting the Energy Committee off the ground and running as soon as possible. I just want to reiterate, though, that I do support, an energy coordinator for our town as well. And I do think that is an integral piece of this plan, of the energy plan. So.
Other comments, questions?
This is Jeff here. What I'm observing is, and I think this is the role of a committee, is it's primarily advisory. And so my specific question is if the committee is not getting the results it wants or prefers, what are its alternatives?
I guess it's always under the select board's purview to amend the charge of the committee, but I think there would need to be some benchmarks established, and that may be one of the committee's first tasks, to establish some goals and benchmarks.
Okay.
To may have a conversation with the select board about, and then evaluate how things are going.
Yeah, because for instance, as I remember years ago, I was on the Conservation Commission, and there were times we disagreed, and it's what is the avenue that's there. Okay, and then my other comment is I'm looking at the resolution, and I'm looking at the fourth whereas, and the word I'm having some difficulty with is, or the term is perceived need. And I would prefer the word perceived was deleted, and it just read new committee in response to a need. And part of that is, I mean, maybe it's diction, but I don't like to do things because they're perceived. I like to do things because I believe they're very real, or it's the right thing to do. And that's how I feel here. So that would be my preference with the wording there, is to strike perceived.
Sure, and just for the context on that was the language selected in the town charter to identify.
That's from the town charter?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a legal word. I mean, we can take it out, but I don't think it was meant to be like, well, that's your perception. I think that.
Well, yeah. I mean,
I don't think it means that, but we can take it.
Okay. I mean, to me, the issue of climate change and the town's role in let's say in that, I'm not choosing my words there, is very real. So I have difficulty with the word perceived. Others may say it's perceived, but I don't.
Yeah.
In looking at the document you provided about the roles of different towns, committees, and commissions, and since I wasn't here, in this role, obviously, when the energy plan was adopted, just some clarification. Why was it just determined that it would be an energy committee over an energy commission?
Yeah, can't recall the exact discussion. I think as most communities have labeled it a committee. As I recall discussions when I was tasking or staffing rather, the task force, committee was the structure identified, and I think there's in the plan as a guide mark for the board. The board has the purview to decide what type of configuration would be most appropriate at that point. But I believe most towns call them an established energy committee, so I believe that's how it came about.
Thank you.
Best I can.
Yeah. Greta, that's a very, I mean, that's an excellent point. I mean, I don't remember what the energy plan says, but I was reading a quote today from Mark Twain where he talks about the difference between a lightning bug and lightning, and the difference between a committee and a commission is significant. Just think our commissions, like the Planning Commission. So it's not a small detail. It's a very real and important distinction, whether we go with committee or commission.
So I think I went back to the task force report, which does in numerous places mention an energy committee and all through the document. And I think that the energy plan that we adopted also calls for an energy committee. But, you know, it's not important, I don't think, as to what the name of it is. It's what they're going to do. That's really the important part. Any other questions before we move to comments from the audience?
Well, but if it were a commission, like the Planning Commission, the energy, if it were a commission, the Energy Commission could come directly to the Select Board with ordinance changes, as opposed to being advisory to the Planning Commission, who would hopefully concur with their request for, let's say, a new ordinance or revisions to an ordinance. And that to me is a piece of the difference here, a big piece.
Well, I don't know that I want to delay action on this. I mean,
It's a good point, yeah.
we weren't asked about a commission. This is like coming out at the last second. The plan is for a committee. Let's get it done, and if it's not working, we'll change it. But you know.
I can live with that. I just was sort of pointing out, Greta raised something, and it's just like, yeah, she's right. Yeah, I agree. You know, if we find the committee is not able to achieve what it is for whatever reason, you know, their fault or not, what we want to achieve, then we can re-look at it.
Well, the people in town who want the energy committee they're obviously very shy and they don't let their voices be heard very well. So we might not ever know.
Okay.
But
Fair enough.
I'll have to take that risk.
Any further comments from the board before we go to the audience? And is there anybody on chat that wishes to speak as well?
I see some. I see one hand raised on the chat. Terry, do you want to go there first?
So let's go to the people in the room. First of all, is anyone you wish to speak on the Energy Committee draft charge? Just please introduce yourself.
Kevin Thorley, resident of Williston. Before I begin, first of all, thank you, Eric, for the continued effort. I know that Chapin sent you some talking points tonight, and he requested we read those into the record. Were you going to do that, or I can help you as well?
If you have them available, I haven't checked my email.
Yeah. So. And I had some points to make myself. I think Chapin's points pretty much sum up what I was going to say. And I am no Chapin, but I'll do my best here. Dear Eric and Select Board members, I, Chapin, must be at the Planning Commission hearing this evening when the agenda item is likely to come up, and I would like to share a few thoughts. They overlap with what I said at the prior meeting, so they will be brief. Please remember that the Energy Plan Task Force already put in more than a year of work, and the Planning Commission almost another year, both with support and guidance from town and CCRPC staff. So the Energy Committee is supposed to aid in the implementation of the plan, not the planning. As we move forward, there will be new pathways they will consider, much as the Planning Commission works on changes in the town plan. But for now, our plate is full with work waiting to be undertaken. 2. The plan specifies there be an energy coordinator to implement the plan with guidance and assistance from the Energy Committee. Without that position, the Energy Committee is not anchored. Eric's charge has the committee reporting to the Planning Commission, but the Planning Commission does not have the authority to act on pathways other than those already assigned to it. Point 3. Since you have decided to consider the Energy Committee first, please be aware that you are not implementing the plan as written. However, this can work out if you hire an energy coordinator soon and at that time revise the charge to the Energy Committee. What I would not do is spend time finding a way for the Energy Committee to have some authority, for example, be a commission rather than a committee. Given where we are, let's move ahead and bring the rules into alignment as soon as we can. As a reminder, below is the exact wording in the energy plan about those rules. And I will read the quote from the plan. General pathways, quote, local objectives 1 through 14. This is a vast plan over many years, and to execute the pathways recommended, the town will require sufficient funding and human resources. Pathway 1.1, hire an energy coordinator on a full-time basis and additional staff as required to implement the energy plan in the timeframes established in the plan. The energy coordinator will ensure that the goals defined in renewable energy generation target table 12 are met. Lead entity, select board, timeframe, short term. And then pathway 1.2, establish a permanent volunteer staffed energy committee to assist the energy coordinator with implementing the measures contained in the energy plan. The committee will monitor the energy plan pathways to assess progress made against the plan's stated benchmarks and make recommendations to alter the pathways to assure that the town will reach its energy goals. The Energy Committee will be appointed by and report to the Select Board and contain 5 to 7 members, including the Town Energy Coordinator. The Energy Committee will serve as the liaison to the community. Subcommittee volunteers may be added as needed. Lead entity, Select Board, timeframe, short term. Point 4, Williston is missing opportunities the longer we delay full implementation of the energy plan. Implementation will benefit residents and the town itself with significant savings and grants to be had if we do our homework. Point 5, I urge you to start a climate action fund, as I, again, Chapin, wrote in May and published in the Observer, A Penny for the Planet, so that we can take advantage of grants and programs requiring matching funds. We don't need to wait for an energy coordinator to start building such a fund. As Chapin said at the last meeting, implementing Williston's energy plan will save residents money, save the town money, help us reach the goals in our energy plan, help us meet the goals in Vermont's comprehensive energy plan, and help us reduce our carbon footprint as we do our part in this global response. You, the Select Board, have invested years of work in our energy plan. Let's focus now on implementation. As we do so, we can and should be careful about spending, but we shouldn't delay working on the implementation. As Eric laid out, the Select Board retains policy oversight and the town manager has administrative oversight, but we can't expect the whole of town government to do all that the plan calls for in addition to their existing responsibilities. We need an energy coordinator and a committee to assist and guide his or her work. Thanks for listening, Chapin Keener.
Thank you.
My personal thoughts. First of all, again, I appreciate the work that this committee and Eric, you have done. I appreciate especially Jeff's point, and I believe both Ted and Greta as well, that we can iterate on this, once we get things moving. One of the concerning things I found in the charge is that it is narrowly scoped to policy as part of the Planning Commission. Policy is an important part of the energy plan, but there are 5 components to the plan, including transportation and land use, building energy usage, recycling, 3, recycling and consumption, 4, renewable energy generation, and 5, agriculture. Restricting the Energy Committee to land use policy off the bat ignores these other aspects, and probably ironically, those other aspects are where the townspeople and the town itself can probably actually realize some financial gain. We know that there's significant benefit to some of the electrification options we have on the table. We've seen other towns across the country adopting especially electric vehicles and saving money in doing so. Police departments especially have been doing this to good effect. So not having this off the bat limits our ability to realize some of the financial benefit. Obviously, you all have an important role in wisely spending the town's money, and I certainly appreciate that as a taxpayer. I also appreciate the fact that there may be decisions we take now that have long-term benefits for the town, and taking them now is the way to start realizing those benefits in the future. The town's already done this in the past. We have the solar arrays that I believe are now generating roughly $30,000 a year for the town, and if my numbers are correct, are going to be paid off in the next 2 to 3 years, at which point that money will be able to be used for other things. Many of the things we could be doing is outlined in the plan fall in similar categories and will have net financial benefit to the town, but it does require action to get started. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brian?
It's just a point of clarification that I think Eric will back me up, that in the Energy Plan Task Force in drafting this energy plan, there was not a large discussion, if there was any at all, about whether it should be a commission versus a energy committee. So I would leave it to your wise judgment as which would be the most effective group.
Thank you. Anyone else from the audience wishes to speak? Yeah, if not, I'd be looking for a motion.
Sorry, Terry,
Yes.
I have the
Oh, I beg your
online
pardon. Somebody-
person.
Yeah.
Hey, Deborah, I'm going to connect you right now, just a moment.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm Deborah Muccio, and I'm a resident of Williston. For over 20 years, I worked in Williston. I volunteered in Williston, and my kids have gone to Williston schools their whole lives. Yesterday, I heard on the news that 50,000 students in Louisiana have not yet returned to schools and may not for months because of the hurricane. And there's no money to fix the schools. So not sure when those kids will be educated. We've probably heard of the oil leak off of the coast of California. And of course, I don't need to list all the recent disasters because there's too many. And surely you're informed of the effects of climate change that will only worsen. And with yearly droughts and extreme heat here in Vermont that we're seeing every summer, it's not crazy to think that there may be wildfires in the Catamount Forest soon. That's going to be expensive. So we need leadership and we need action at every level. An energy committee will be nice and helpful and useful, but it's not enough. We need a funded energy coordinator position with expertise and the power to put the energy plan into action. Tonight, my son, who spoke to you last month, will ask me, what are the adults doing about this crisis? We are running out of time, 6 years to be exact, as he reminds me on a continuous basis. So my question to you is, when will the energy coordinator position be on the select board meeting agenda? Thank you.
Thank you. And we agreed that we would be taking this up so that we would be looking at funding for the current fiscal year. So I would anticipate that we would, right now we don't even have a job description for an energy coordinator, but that will be coming forth as soon as the town manager can get to do that. So I would think that we'll be doing this relatively soon.
Okay, a date would be helpful, as we've been hearing that response for quite a few meetings now. And it just sounds like it's kicking it down the road. And tell me what I'm supposed to tell my son.
Thank you for your comments.
Is there a date that you can provide for when this will be on the meeting agenda?
I can't tell you that tonight. It will be on an agenda in the near future.
Does that include this year or 2022, next month, the month after?
It'll be on our agenda in the near future. As to whether or not it gets funded in this current year will be up to the select board to determine at that time.
It's a very unsatisfying answer. Thank you.
Anyone else on the line that would like to talk?
Nope, no more comments, sir.
At this time, then, I think the board has asked their questions. We've heard from the audience, and I'd be looking for a motion.
I'll move to adopt the resolution as presented to create the Town of Williston Energy Committee, and further move to adopt the charge of the committee as presented.
Did we want to remove that one word?
As modified.
As modified. I'm removing that word perceived.
Yes, that's.
Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I'm going to vote in favor of it because I think it is a good first step.
I also agree with Jeff. I think it is a good first step. And again, would like to reiterate my support of an energy coordinator and the potential future expansion of the charge as needed.
Any other discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I think I heard 4 ayes. So thank you all for your attendance, and we appreciate your input. So thanks very much.
How do you sign up? I guess I should have asked that earlier.
I can't hear you with your mask on.
What's the process for joining, or how does, what happens next?
Well, the committee will be advertised for those who are interested in being on the committee. Depends on how many people apply for it as to what the process will be after that. There'll be an interview process, obviously. There may be, it depends again on how many people apply as to whether or not we have written questions to ask them in advance, like we did for the select board position. So that will be at since we now have a committee as of tonight, that should be advertised soon. Moving on to the easement for the airport noise monitoring device. Eric?
So this is, I believe we spoke about this maybe over a year ago, but the Burlington Airport's installing noise monitoring devices in looking to install one in Williston, and there's one in Winooski and South Burlington that are about ready to come online. And the location where these could be located is defined by a noise contour map provided by the airport. So we've got a certain area in town we can consider. We've been looking for a suitable location, and staff has worked with the airport to find what we think is a good location. It's confirmed by all parties involved. It's the small piece of the former Robert property that the town acquired a couple years ago at 4964 Williston Road. It's across the street from the new U-Haul facility. It's about a 68 by 83 foot parcel. The footprint for the device is small. There'd be some minor clearing of brush required. Data from these devices will not impact noise contour mapping for the airport. That's a regulated and defined process. But its goal is to be transparent with the public about noise observed. There'll be a web portal for anyone to log in and observe, as I understand it. Staff's reviewed an easement. Just to back up, the select board need to grant an easement to place this device on the property. Staff's reviewed it. City of Burlington's reviewed it with their attorney. We had one change they accepted. We just asked if we need to move this at some point for any need that we have on the property that we could, that they'd move it, and they had no objection to that. So the question for the board tonight is, should the board accept this easement to grant the manager to sign it? And I believe the airport would hopefully look to move quickly to install this if they have time at the end of this construction season.
Thanks. Questions for Eric regarding this?
You said it's small, just like, what's the general size of it? What does small mean?
Yeah, sorry, I had a diagram that I meant to pull up tonight. Probably a base of maybe 5 feet or so, and it's kind of, if you think of just kind of a large, essentially a microphone sticking in the air. Probably the footprint would be something like 10 by 10, maybe something like that. But I can share an image with the board as well. Just have to.
And it will be set back from the road, like it's not going to be on the road. I worry about, like, I mean, obviously they've done this before, but traffic noise and things like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact location, but I know they've looked at it and their consultants have looked at it and they've felt it's a suitable location to collect the data that they need. So.
Eric, just quickly, I assume it's a no-cost easement, which is fine. And then I think you addressed my other question of what is the term, particularly if the town has a need to use the land, but it sounds like that will be addressed in the easement.
Yeah, that's what we look to address, Jeff. Not a no-cost easement, and basically as long as the town doesn't have another use for the property and it's getting in the way, that it can remain as long as they're going to continue that program. But
okay.
Who knows, someday we may need another pump station and that may be the spot to put it, and we don't want the location of the noise monitor to impede that need.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking of a satellite fire station, but pump station works too. That was a joke about the fire station. Don't worry.
Small piece of property.
Maybe room for one truck.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Eric? A motion has been suggested.
Move to, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
No. I was waiting for you to make the Energy Committee motion.
I move to approve an easement with the city of Burlington for a noise monitoring device on the town's parcel located at 4964 Williston Road, and to authorize the town manager to sign the easement on the town's behalf.
Second.
Sorry, discussion on the motion.
So I read the easement and I was really happy that basically we can get out of it if we need to use the land. So that's, it's an at-will easement essentially, for as long as we want to let them use it. So, yeah.
Glad to hear the legal interpretation.
Free of charge.
Any other discussion on the motion? And if not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
And there's no opponents, so we're moving on then to the manager's report.
Thanks, Terry, and yeah, I've had Shirley's put together a finance report the first couple months of the year. There's a little lag with this one as they work to close the end of the fiscal year, adjust for this budget year. Shirley, did you want to walk through any brief highlights if the board's interested this evening?
I'll look to you. If you have already read it, I don't want to repeat what you've already read.
We just got it tonight, so if you just put out the highlights would be fine.
Sure. So the biggie, property tax revenue, is right in line with budget at this point. And actually, I'm going to step back for a minute and explain why we don't issue July reports. There are lots of transactions that have to happen to move activity from July and August back to the last fiscal year. So most of those, and there might be some little things I haven't found yet because working on your end between the budget and other projects. But so the one thing that we have to wait for is the preliminary cash flow that comes from the state of Vermont, and that tells us what portion of the property taxes need to go to the school district and back to the state of Vermont. And that was just received last Thursday. So when property taxes are posted,